Welcome back to another episode on Journey to Authenticity, a podcast helping you to become fully authentic on your journey to success. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap, and I'm a human just like you, striving to build a dream life, all while I stay true to myself. But what if you're in a position where you're lacking emotion, or better said, lacking the feeling of emotion, giving yourself permission to feel the things that you feel? Or maybe you're in a place of struggling with being your authentic self. You know exactly what you want to do, who you want to be, or at least have a good idea of it, although your limiting beliefs are getting in the way. Or maybe you're caring more about what somebody else thinks of you or believes of you over yourself. That's exactly why it's Spencer Rogich joining us today, because he's transformed that. Yeah, he's struggled with not feeling emotions. He transformed that at such a young age where he's been able to be real with himself. He's been able to become the person he's truly happy with, fulfilled with, and he's living his dream life. Best part is he's consistently manifesting what he will accomplish. That in mind, welcome to the show, Spencer.
Thanks for having me, bro.
You were doing something way exciting when we first initially scheduled it, so I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah. It's been a journey, that's for sure.
That's the way to go. You're doing exciting things in your career, and you've done a lot in your career, even beyond tattooing, but it's awesome to see how much you've accomplished in. COVID was a long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like an eternity, bro. Like 4 years, 5 years. It's like a flip of a switch, and here we are.
But it's like how much you've accomplished in the last couple of years is phenomenal, man.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So what initially inspired tattooing for you?
So tattooing, man, like I was always into art when I was a kid. So I'd take all the art classes, everything like that when I was like elementary, junior high. My grandma, my mom, all both like artists in their own way, right? But then once high school came about, like art was no longer cool, right? Like it was all about football, girls, like art just kind of took like a back burner seat. Like that was no longer cool. But really what happened is in junior high, I had an art teacher, and no matter what I would do, I couldn't get an A. Like I would be drawing like 4 hours a day, like 5 hours a day, trying to do whatever I could to get an A. And I remember I got an A minus, and it was like using chalk, but I couldn't get an A. But it was like people were like Picasso in this class. Like this art teacher was like, we're junior high, and I'm like, going home feeling like shit because I'm like trying so hard to get an A, and I just couldn't. And so I think that also deterred me away too. So then high school came around, and I was like, oh, like art's not my thing. Like I don't think I'm good enough to be an artist. And then I had a wife at the time, and she, like me and her were both doing normal jobs. So I was doing sales. I got my degree in professional sales at Weber State. She had her degree, so we were both doing our thing. And she's like, oh, I'm going to learn how to microblade. And I was like, all right, cool. This was during COVID. And so during that time, I was the #1 sales rep at the company that I was working for, but I was just playing video games. And so I was like, okay, this is too easy. I need to figure out like a hobby. So then I started getting back into drawing. And then she was like, okay, I'm going to take a tattoo course. And I was like, well, bet. Like if you're going to tattoo, I'm going to tattoo as well. And so then I reached out to another tattoo artist, and I was going to like apprentice under him. So I just kind of like paved my way, like just moved blocks to get in there. And then eventually went to the tattoo shop that I had gotten all my other work done. And I was just like, hey man, like if I started showing him my work, like my drawings and stuff like that. And he's like, oh yeah, if you're really good, like if I would have known, I would have got you in here. And I was like, this is already playing out so textbook because I'm literally trying to get a job here. And I was like, well, if I get some people in here to tattoo, can I? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so that's like what started it all. I tattooed some fake skin. I tattooed the word family, like, stars and stripes, like super ghetto. I was like, who wants a tattoo? And it looked like shit. I just had people blowing me up of like wanting to get a tattoo. And I was like, all right, cool. And so my first ever tattoo was unsupervised. It was behind this girl's ear, and she was actually deaf, but I had no idea she was deaf because we were wearing masks. This was during COVID. And she just tells me like, oh, by the way, I can read lips. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what to do with that, but cool. You know what I mean? And I'm like tattooing her, and I'm like trying to talk to her while I'm tattooing her, like, how's it feeling? Like, whatever. Nothing, bro. Crickets. So I'm sweating bullets, like so nervous. The tattoo artist of the shop, like he's doing his thing, and I'm just like, fuck, this is so bad. Like, she's not saying anything, but that's kind of what started that whole journey. And then it was just, I didn't even have a spot there. Like I was piggybacking off of one of the other apprentices But there was a girl who was, well, this is actually crazy. So fast forward 4 years, me and this girl tattoo at the same shop now. But she was leaving to go and manage another shop. But it was like this, like supposedly she's leaving. And I was just like, I know she's going to leave. So she left. And so like probably like 4 weeks later, I have my own spot and I'm there. And yeah, bro, it's been a journey. That's for sure.
Let's go. I'm curious. How did you find out she was deaf?
When we had our masks on, like I'm like still trying to talk to her. And then when we take off the mask, that's like where it's like, you know, when people are deaf and they're like, because I'm trying to talk to her at this point still, because I still didn't realize that she was deaf. And then it was like that, like the noises and stuff when, you know, people are trying to talk, but they're sure. And so that's when I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. You can read lips. But I was like, that'd be me being like, oh yeah, like my favorite color is red. And you're like, okay, cool. Like good to know. But I didn't ever process like, which is probably a nicer way of being like, oh, instead of, you know, I'm deaf. It's like, oh, I can read lips.
We
we have masks on. So it's like,
that would have been so hard for deaf people in the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine.
It was hard for everybody. It was a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure it was harder for those.
Oh yeah. It was bizarre, bro. Cause that's like what my tattoo career started was like during COVID. And so it was like,
there's so many blessings.
Oh bro. It was so good because it was like, I was doing my sales job and I was crushing it. So I'd work for my normal 9 to 5 job. And then I would go from my normal sales job and I'd tattoo from 5 to 10 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. And then I'd tattoo 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. So I was like just able to make it work. And I was carrying like I was the number one sales rep for that company too. I'd sold a multi-million-dollar deal to Johnson & Johnson. I was going to get a guaranteed $60,000 commission check from that if I would have got the vaccine. And I don't know, like, you know, what people's thoughts are on the vaccine. I had my own reasons as to why I didn't want to get that. But I was also in the military and I was like, I already said like, okay, like I'm never going to have somebody tell me what I can do with my body again. And, yeah, after I got that sell, the company got bought out by a private equity group. Summit Partners, the largest in the nation, and they were like just trying to like make that company happy. And so like everybody has to get vaccinated. And they made an example out of me because I was like, I want to talk to the chief revenue officer because it was me and him, and we built this company up single-handedly. All the other salespeople left, and so I was like, okay, there should be like some type of like understanding, you know. And I was like, hey, I've been working from home for 1.5 years. Can I just continue working from home? They're like, nope. If you have to come into work for any reason at all, you can't be considered work from home. And I was like, you have to get double vaccinated in the next 4 weeks. And I was like, well, like, I guess just fire me then. But I heard like, so Lose Yourself, I feel like is the greatest song of all time. And so I heard that playing in my head. I was like, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture or let it slip? And I was just like, fuck it, fire me then. And that's like what the whole chasm.
You use that exact language.
Yep.
Fuck it, fire me then. Let's go.
Yep. And then they gave me like $2,000 of hush money because I put a post on LinkedIn and it started going viral. But I was like, oh, I already told them like I wouldn't say anything. But I'm sure I could have took them to court. But it was the greatest thing to ever happen to me because I was also speaking that into existence, right? Like I was telling my clients, like I'm eventually going to go full time. But those golden shackles were tight. Like they were tight, bro. Like I was making multiple 6 figures. Like was able to travel. Then they started to like cut it down. And I was just like, I wasn't shit as a tattoo artist at that point. You know what I mean? Like I was going on Facebook and getting kicked off of cleaning out my closet groups and all sorts of groups because I'm advertising, you know, $50 tattoos. So, I mean, I was like constantly getting kicked out of groups. But I was like, I'm going to make this happen no matter what.
That's the way to go. It's the grind, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
They always say you either pay with time or you pay with money to accomplish your goals.
Yes.
Right there and then quitting a job, you probably had money, but...
Yep. And I set some aside because I'm like, okay, like let me have enough that it's like, if I'm a broke, starving artist, that's fine. Like I almost quit my sales job just to go to construction because I was like, one thing that I did is I looked at the person that was above me and I was like, do I want that life? You know, do I want that life? And he was talking about how he was giving his wife an allowance and all this stuff. And like, he was like mentoring me. And I was like, I do not want this life. Like, this is not the life for me. Like high stress all the time, very ego driven. I was just like, this just isn't for me. And I'd already gone to school. You know what I mean? I've been doing sales for 10 years, but I just like, this doesn't feel fulfilling. This doesn't feel like my purpose.
How old were you when you quit your job or when you
I was 28.
28.
28. Yep.
That's phenomenal.
And then shortly after, I got manifest tattooed on my knuckles because I'm like, that's like a full send. Like, I'm not going back to like the normal business world. Like, who's going to want to, and it's funny because Travis Barker did the exact same thing after he like left his job. He's like, I'm going to tattoo my whole body because it's like, I never want to go back to that corporate world. That was the same thing for me. It was like, you know, I tattooed my hands, shortly after tattooed my face. And I'm like, this is full send. Like, this is all in.
No going back, baby. Let's do this.
Exactly.
And in reality, at some point, you have to make that transition.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's not, that doesn't mean you be stupid about it and be like, all right, screw it. You know, I have a wife and kids at home. You need to make sure your family's fed.
Yes, for sure.
If you're single, whatever, just have a wife. There's a little bit more flexibility in there.
I mean, but Tony Robbins talks about it too. He's like, you got to burn the boats. Like, you can't have a plan B.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, like, I always tell people, I'm like, yeah, like, put some money aside. Like, and if you're going to do whatever you're going to do as like your passion project, like, do that on top of your normal job, right? Like, I'm like, hey, I still have, you know, 6 hours in the day. Like, what am I going to do with that? I'm not just going to quit my job. Like, I need to make sure that I can actually make this happen. But sacrifices have to be made. You know what I mean? And if you're not willing to make those sacrifices, you're not cut out for what it is that you think you want to do. Until you're ready to go, you know, make sacrifices. You're fine with, you know, missing out with, you know, going out on the weekends with your friends. You're fine with missing out on watching TV. Like, if you can't give those things up, you're going to get chewed up and spit out in the entrepreneur worlds.
That's just the reality.
That's what it is, bro.
You have to work hard to make a transition reasonable, and then you got to burn the boats.
Exactly,
because you're not. It's never really going to be a smooth transition.
Yes, yeah. No, there's no such thing as easy, bro.
We talked about limiting beliefs before this podcast.
Yes.
If you've never been a full-time entrepreneur before, it's going to be scary.
Yeah,
but you can.
Yeah.
You just got to jump and figure it out.
That's the thing, bro. You gotta jump off the cliff and let the wings, you know, build as you're falling. Like, sometimes you got to go into the unknown. The amount of times that I've thrown my hat into the ring of the unknown to be able to get to where I'm at is insane. But it's just like, I always say, like, faith over fear. Like, if I remember making a pact, like one thing that I was doing every New Year's was making some type of resolution, right? So this was like the beginning of my healing journey. Like, I remember there was one time where I was saying, like, no longer will I suppress any emotions. Like, if I feel like I want to cry, I'm going to cry fully. Because I also remember, like, my dad telling me at a funeral that I was crying. I think it was for my grandma. And he's like, oh, like, don't cry. Like, guys don't cry. And I was like, I challenged him that. Like, I was like, no, guys do cry and I'm going to cry. But he, you know, he had his own life. Like, he was a cop and everything like that. And so he only knew what he knew, right? But I remember going to, this was early on in my career. I don't even know if I might have just barely been tattooing, but I remember going to a tattoo seminar, and like the tattoo artist was sharing their story, and I was in the back crying, bro. Like, I was in the back crying, and I was like, I could try to wipe these tears away, but I'm like, I'm going to be fully in this emotion, right? Like, I'm crying. I'm around all these people that I look up to. I go to another tattoo convention, and they were talking about, like, getting rid of limiting beliefs, right? Like, we would write down all the limiting beliefs that we'd have. And then they were asking, like, who wants to come up and share? And I'm always been like, I'm going to be the first one. I'm the one that sits in the front of the room. I'm trying to get comfortable with the uncomfortability. So I stand up and I literally look at the paper and I just start bawling, bro. Just start bawling. And I'm trying to read, like, all these things of, like, these self-limiting beliefs. But what was dope about this is this created a chasm of everybody else who went up there. They started just fucking bawling, bro. Like, there was Laura Marie, which was like Ink Master winner, Angel Rose, like, she's been on Ink Master, and everybody was fucking crying, bro. So it was such a cool experience to be able to be like, create that chasm of, like, show the vulnerability, show the emotion. And so it was a magical thing. But another thing that I realized too is, I remember I was at an event with a Lions Not Sheep event, and I just had this feeling. I'm like, hey, if I ever have any butterflies, that means I need to act on it. Like, so I remember they were like, because I was set to speak on stage the next day, and they were trying to have people come up on stage because they were like, basically just like, who wants to come into the unknown? And I was like, this sounds scary. Let me raise my hand. And they call on me, and I have to go and, like, give this, like, 1 minute talk on, you have 30 seconds to prep. But then that event led me to go out to LA, and this dude was shooting for, like, Floyd Mayweather and stuff like that. And I was talking to my fiance about this but he would want me to like talk so highly about like how I was the best tattoo artist, how I was this, how I was that. And I couldn't do it, bro. Like I could not do it. I did not feel comfortable saying like I'm the best. I just, for whatever reason, it felt like there was a frog in my throat. Like my throat chakra was just completely blocked off. But I'm like, well, why can't I, like, why, like I know what I'm capable of, but why am I not able to like express this? Yeah, there's just been some interesting things that I'm always trying to like challenge myself with in order to grow.
That's fair. My question, I want to go back to the moment you were at a funeral.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
Yeah.
How old were you at that point?
Oh man, I had to have probably at least been maybe high school.
That's an age where you start to just do what everybody else starts to do.
Oh yeah.
You start to be what everybody else starts to be. Well, do you remember that inkling of like, no, this isn't true?
I think I've just always been an emotional person. You know what I mean? Like I'm a Cancer, I'm a double Cancer, and I would have emotions, but it was like my dad, he didn't have a dad growing up. He learned how to be a dad through John Wayne and, you know, Marvel stuff. So it was like the toxic masculinity was how I was raised. And I think like I you know, I still embodied some of that toxic masculinity, like, you know, try to be alpha, try to be good at everything, try to be the top person at sports, which I was. But I still think that my mom is also very, very emotional. And my mom would always give me that space of like being able to be emotional. And so I think I just realized, and I don't know why I challenged him. And maybe it was just because I'm at a funeral and I'm like, I feel like I hated going to funerals because I would bawl my eyes out. And it wouldn't even have to be somebody that I was super good friends with, because I had a lot of friends that died really early on, you know what I mean? Like drug overdoses, suicides. Like I experienced a lot of death when I was young. And it was from people that you thought were going to be like super happy. You would never think anything about this. Like, and so I just was like, funerals, I was like, that was like a safe space for me to, you know, really be in tune with my emotions. So I don't know what caused that, but I remember just challenging him, and I was like, no, like I can cry here. Like I'm 100% that, like my feelings are valid.
Absolutely. It's such an empowering thing, especially, I mean, we're talking to a young generation now, a generation that truly wants to be their authentic self.
Yes.
And create the life that they desire, right?
Yes.
Authenticity is a higher emotion, a higher vibration than even love is.
That's crazy. That gave me chills, bro, because I literally learned that when I was talking to this medium. She was telling me, like, she was like going through like all of my things, and she's like, you know what, a higher, like, cause I was like, oh yeah, love's the highest frequency. She's like, you know what's actually higher that they discovered? She's like, authenticity. And I was like, oh wow, like that hits, you know what I mean? Because especially with social media, like I was posting shit that I'm like, a lot of people didn't agree that I should post or whatever, but it was just like, I have crazy bad ADD too, right? And so it's like when I would challenge myself on social media to just share my thoughts. You know what I mean? Like I didn't think of like, oh, how does this impact my business? I lost so many followers from some of the stuff that I posted and the things that I said, but it just felt so authentic to me. But it was like my battleground, right? Like it was like, okay, like I'm so afraid of like posting stuff on social media because what are people going to think of me, that I just had to put myself into the fire every single day. And I would share shit that I probably, like, looking back at it now, like being like understanding where I'm at now and where my business and stuff is now, like I can be a lot more like methodical of what I post, how I post it. But back then, like I was just literally just trying to like show people what my vibe was, like what I was about. And if you align, great. If you don't, and I mean, I got tons of hate, bro. I mean, I've like, my thing is I would just block people. Like people would be sending like negative things towards me and I would just block them. You know what I mean? Like I have probably hundreds of people that are blocked because I'm like, I don't need that negativity. And it's like, I'm not asking for it, but I am leaving myself open to the attack by putting myself out there. But I also wanted people to understand like, this is real shit. You know what I mean? Like other people can be like, oh yeah, that same thing's going on with me, but they don't feel like it is. You know what I mean? Like it can feel very lonely. And so I just didn't ever want like to suppress my emotions or my feelings because I'm trying to save face with, you know, my audience.
Absolutely. It's dealing with hate is just there's a cause and effect to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the effect. The cause is that you're living an authentic life and people don't like it.
Yep.
You're triggering their emotions,
Yes.
their thoughts, creating emotions for them. So they're reacting to your shit.
Yep.
When it's actually not your shit, it's their shit.
Right.
And they need to go look in the mirror and really determine what's going on.
Exactly.
Some people, I've gotten hate, obviously being on the podcast, talking vulnerably. It's just the reality.
Yeah.
But when you turn on that camera, anybody can see it and anybody can say whatever the heck they want,
For sure.
which I personally love.
Absolutely.
Anytime I get hate, I personally kind of find it funny. Like, how immature do you need to be to go give somebody hate online?
Right.
But I also find a sense of like sympathy.
Right,
Like,
bro, I was literally going to say the same thing. It's like I definitely feel like sympathy for those people, because I'm like, for like somebody to feel like they have to go out of their way to try to lower somebody else's vibration, lower somebody else's frequency. I'm like, you have to be coming from a place of hurt. You have to be having these triggers that are popping up for you that are making you act some type of way. And so that was a thing too, where I was like, okay, I went from like this like anger to being like, you know, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know what I mean? And like I would even comment to people's like comments and stuff. It's like, hey, like hopefully you're gonna have a better day. Like, and I'm not saying that to be a smart ass. Like, genuinely, like if this triggered you so bad, some random person on social media talking about something that just triggers you, like hopefully you can get this figured out, and also consider it a blessing that it's coming up for you.
absolutely. 1000%. Anytime you're triggered, it's important to look in the mirror and be like, what was that?
Yeah, like where did that come from? That wasn't me. You know what I mean?
I've worked through a lot of my crap, thankfully, over the last couple of years.
Yep.
And by the way, marriage will definitely, it's like
Yes.
an enhancer. And so I've had to become better.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. I chose to.
Yes.
And it's such a blessing.
Oh, for
And
sure.
we came both from broken homes. Her parents were divorced. My parents were divorced. So what I learned was yell and just
Yep.
divorce. What she learned was the same.
Yep.
That's what we learned.
Yes.
And so after a couple arguments of clearly it not being effective, it's like, hey, we need to be better.
yeah.
And then we started doing things slowly. And that's what it is being a human, right? You get triggered, you look in the mirror. What was that? You recognize what's going wrong, what's going right. And you just keep making these tweaks. Over time, become the person you want to be.
Exactly, bro. And like the thing that I like to think of is like, okay, what would my higher self do? So it's always like a quest for trying to become a better version of yourself. Because there's a philosophy like the Kabbalah, and it just talks about like each interaction that you have with somebody is either getting you one step closer to your higher self, or it's getting you closer to your lower self. And so that allows you to be so much more in tune and aware of like your everyday. So it's like every day, every moment matters. You know what I mean? Instead of just being in this like complacency state of, you know, I'm just going to stay like how I am. But it's like, no, like you can always try to become better. And it's not even from the mere fact of like achievement standpoint or financial gain or anything like that. But it's just like, okay, how can I show up in the world more authentically? How can I give more? How can I serve more? And so I think when you're like in the mindset of like growth, but it's like get rid of the equation of like, oh, money is what equates to growth. You know what I mean? Success. Cause I had you know, I've always tried to like look at myself to be able to feel like, okay, what kind of traumas did I have as a kid? And for me, it's like I felt like I would only get my love if I was I was achieving, you know what I mean? And so it's like I put so much pressure on myself to try to be the best at whatever. But then I was like, also like, kid, that's a gift too, because it's allowed me to have such a heavy work ethic. But I think it's just like really looking deep. Like another thing that I've realized too, and I've had a chance to talk with my fiance about it, is like I always wanted to be like the cool kid, right? So I would allow people to walk all over me. I'd allow people to treat me negatively, poorly, because for whatever reason, I wanted to be part of that cool crowd. And most of the time, the cool crowd, and there's probably some like deep rooted trauma in that, but the cool crowd was usually people who were like the most like toxic for me and were taking me out of my element of like who I truly was.
Absolutely. Where I'm curious is going back to the transition from corporate to business. How was that for you? You mentioned not being very good at tattooing. You mentioned not knowing really how to make this happen. How did you go from that to where you're at now and finding that success?
So I have a very interesting life, bro. I've had over 30 jobs. I didn't carry a job for longer than a year. I did multi-level marketing. I became the top retailer and distributor in all of Northern Utah the first 3 months. I was a personal trainer all through college. I had a personal training business. I helped people get ready for shows. So I feel like I've always been like grooming myself for what was to come. Like I'm a big believer in like your fate, your destiny. And so it wasn't like a crazy transition as far as the entrepreneur route, because I also sold drugs and stuff when I was young, you know what I mean? So it's like I've always had this like entrepreneur like mindset, but it was just figuring out like how do I become a better tattoo artist? And that's when I started seeking out mentors. Like I remember I'd get up at 6 a.m. To go and talk to one of my mentors who was in New Zealand, or not New Zealand, sorry, Switzerland. I had another mentor who was in London. So I have a very unique ability to find teachers and be able to get mentored by them. But I was also buying courses. I mean, I probably spent 20 grand just in tattoo courses alone. But I learned how to tattoo through YouTube, but then I would also seek out mentorship because I'm like, I know that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to figure out like somebody who's walked this path before so I can minimize the time it takes for me to, because I've had a relatively good amount of success in a lot of different avenues, but it was always because I kind of mimicked what other people were doing. There's a book, it's called Still Like an Artist, and it just basically talks about like find something that's already been working and just figure out how to create it and make it your own. And so that's what allowed me to really like get going full speed into this. But the entrepreneurship thing, I've done that my whole life.
I respect it.
Yeah.
You got to learn somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's selling drugs or selling art, you got to learn somewhere.
Yeah.
And the reality is business is simple.
Yeah.
Any topic, and I've really been trying to dive deeper into this and understand it. Any topic in life, humans overcomplicate.
Oh, absolutely.
It drives me insane. Your identity, spirituality, relationships, finances, business. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated.
No. I always chose the path of the most resistance too, for whatever reason, which like I'm not speaking that into existence anymore, but like I always was trying to find the path of like the most resistance possible for whatever reason. But I think I needed to learn those lessons, and like I think subconsciously I knew I needed to learn those lessons that I went through. But yeah, people overcomplicate shit all the time.
Yeah. I was like you for the longest time up till last year. If it wasn't hard, it means I wasn't doing something right.
Yes, facts.
If it was easy, I would literally find a way to make it hard. And the reality is that sometimes, man, I was working on something that I didn't need to be working on.
Mm-hmm.
I was dedicating time to something that I was going to not do in a month.
It was
just go, 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 not because it was effective. It was feeding this limiting beliefs that hard work means I'm enough.
Yes. The amount of things that I manifested into my life just because I'm like, my life is too easy right now. Let's add some like hard things to it. Like I just brought in so much shit into my life all at once to just basically get me back to the same exact point. And I'm like, why? Why did I feel like this like urge of like I have to be constantly working, I have to be constantly doing things? And I'm like, just fucking chill, bro. Like just relax.
And sometimes that's the truth.
Yeah.
And that's when the best ideas come to fruition, is when you're relaxing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. When you're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, you're not in like a flow state. You're not in a creative state. Like when you're like tapping into that flow state, that's when ideas come. It's like, that's why ideas come in the shower. That's why ideas come when you're driving. Cause you're chilling. Like your brain's finally shut off.
Absolutely. So we talk about the concept of vulnerability within self, within the public eye. What was your maybe you didn't have a process. Maybe you just mentioned you're an emotional guy and you're okay with this, but how did you start to challenge even yourself? You mentioned being at a tattoo artist convention, I think you called it, just crying in front of everybody. And, you know, the awareness that you could wipe away these tears away, but you chose not to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so there was a couple, like I said, I like to put myself into the fire a few different times. And so I remember too, this was during COVID, and I had like a little like home gym in one of my old houses. I had boxes and shit everywhere. It looked so ugly, but I would just do like videos of me like punching this punching bag in the morning and like having Lose Yourself on. And I was just literally trying to like allow myself to become comfortable in front of the camera, like allowing myself to be shown, allowing myself to be vulnerable. And so I just remember like telling myself like, hey, I got to at least go do a story like once a day where I'm talking, or I'm at least showing my face, because it was so hard for me. And so that was one thing that I did. And then the vulnerability piece, like I said, like there was like New Year's resolutions of like, okay, what are some major things that I want to change about myself? And I don't know if these are downloads from, whatever source or whatever, but that was just like something that I'm like, I know that this is something that I struggle with. And so I need to become more vulnerable. And I think it's a huge thing, especially for men too, is like to be able to become vulnerable, to be able to show your emotions. And, I think a lot of people used to think that that was like weakness, but I think like vulnerability and like your emotions is like the ultimate form of like masculine, because it's like you're showing the world how comfortable you are with yourself, how comfortable you are with expressing your emotions. And so to me, that became like the most masculine thing that I could do.
It's Jordan Peterson said it best. Become a monster and then learn to
tame it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I forget his exact wording. I love the concept.
Yes.
But the truth is crying is okay.
Yeah.
Showing your emotions is okay.
Right.
And the reason being is it's just not for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many times does actually showing your emotions allow for somebody else to feel their emotions?
Well, it's that vulnerability concept. It's like the amount of like connection that I build from tattoo clients is because I'm being vulnerable with them. They're being vulnerable with me. Like that's like how to create like a true authentic connection, is like I tell you like what's going on in my life. You tell me what's going on in your life. No matter what the differences are that we may have, we can come together and realize like, okay, we're still trying to figure shit out. We're still trying to, whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter if it's left, right, up, down, circle, square. Like when you can be vulnerable with somebody, you can find that relatability with somebody.
Absolutely. It's a concept that it's this aspect of storytelling. We're wearing Disney right now.
Yeah.
Best storytellers in the world.
Oh, they're so good.
And the reason being is because when they tell a story, they allow other people to see themselves in their story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And through that process of storytelling, when you share somebody's story, they'll hear you, they'll understand you, they'll understand your life. But a good story, they'll also start to see themselves in your story.
Absolutely.
Even if it's black and white difference, they'll still see their story.
Yes. And it may just bring something up entirely different, but it's like humans like to have like this like equal exchange, right? Like it's like, okay, I gave you a good service. You give me a tip, whatever. It's like, okay, you opened up your heart to me. I got to figure out some way of opening my heart to you. This cool exchange, like creating connection. And going back to Disney, this was another thing that I came to realize too, is like how many things that I would allow myself or disallow myself to not ever have any joy in, because it was like, I always had that too cool for school mentality. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Disney's not cool. Like all these things aren't cool. And I went through my life for so long in such like a pessimistic mindset. Like I was like, it was like almost cool to not have fun. You know what I mean? Like it was cool to be like angry. It was cool to be whatever. And then it's like, once I allowed myself, like, oh yeah, Disneyland's dope. You know what I mean? It's like one of my favorite places to go. It's a good time. It's good vibes. You know what I mean? But it was like, I think that was also such like a vulnerability piece too. Cause it's like, I was a low key nerd as a kid. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Pokemon, like Magic the Gathering, like all that stuff. But I was like a closet nerd. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I can't let my cool friends know what I'm playing. You know what I mean? But my dad was always very authentic with that. Like he's Batman of Ogden. Like he dresses up as Batman. He's got a Batmobile. He goes and does charity work at hospitals, but he's so comfortable and whole in himself. And I was like, I want to embody that. I want to be more like that. I want to also nurture the kid in me as well. And so that was a big thing too, that I had to realize, like, hey, like you got some work to do. Like your inner child needs healing.
Through this entire journey, through every aspect of this podcast, you just mentioning, I recognize, I transform. I recognize, I transform. Do you have a process for this, or are you just living in this flow state of, oh, I realize I'm lacking here, and this is what I can do to heal it? What are you doing to consistently better yourself?
I think it's just a natural human thing when you really like tap in. I mean, and we'll go with the flow state too. Like there's some things that I just do intuitively now. But I also, I believe in past lives. I believe in karmic debt. Like I think that I've done this life many, many times. And so I look at it from like even a soul level. It's like, okay, if I've done this so many times, why do I keep reincarnating? Why do I keep doing this? And it's because, even the movie Soul, right? Like it talks about your soul contract. And it's like, okay, maybe I came here because I needed to evolve and I needed to grow. And so I'm always looking at ways of what I can evolve and I can grow from. And so I don't know if there's necessarily a process. I think there was a process back when I was younger, when I would set like certain intentions based off of like my New Year's resolutions. But I'm always just trying to figure out like, okay, like where could I be fucked up in? Like where could I have trauma in? And especially after going through my divorce, like I had to just have extreme accountability and ownership of everything. And so that's like one thing, like Jocko Willink talks about that, like extreme accountability, like own everything, like everything is my fault. And when you do that, you become your author of your own life. And so I just am always like, okay, like where did this interaction go wrong? How can I take accountability? Where can I improve from? And it's not even from like this like egotistical standpoint of like, yeah, I'm going to admit to everything that I did wrong, but it's like, no, genuinely like, okay, like how did I screw up? How could I make things better? So, I mean, I don't know if there is necessarily a process. I think there's just like some intuitively like guided principles that I go off of. But definitely when I was young, it was like being aware, setting my intentions. Yeah.
And I love that. And the reason I ask it honestly is kind of determined. I believe that somebody's a transformative person either because they were born that way or because they learned to be that way.
Yes, for sure.
Studies show statistically, study after study, 90 to 95% somebody will live within their subconscious.
Yes.
For their entire life.
Yes.
Their thoughts, their emotions, their behaviors, their results, their triggers, their glimmers. I don't know if you know what that is.
Nah.
A glimmer is like a trigger, but it's just you're happy.
Okay.
So you walk in and your wife, fiance runs up to you, gives you a kiss. I'm so proud of you for working so hard today, and it makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
Okay.
That's like a glimmer.
Okay.
That's subconscious, 90-95% your entire life.
And you're running off of those thoughts that are formed from ages 0 to 7, which depending on how you're raised, like you're either told, no, you can't do that, or you can do anything you set your mind to. Like I'm very aware of like even kids, like when they say they can't do something, I'm like, no, we're correcting that right now. Like you're going to continue to think that because your brain is so malleable at this age that all these neurons are firing and you're going to start believing the things that you say and you're going to hold these thoughts and you're not even going to know where these thoughts are coming from. But because you were saying you can't do something or your parents are telling you, no, don't do that. You can't do that. Like that's like where you're operating your 95% of your life is in your subconscious. And until you actually like go in and reprogram your subconscious, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that kind of stuff, like rewire your brain. Mushrooms do that. They create the new neural pathways in your brain. So you're no longer firing against this wall. And so you have to, there's a really cool meditation that I did, but it was basically like you go in and you look at your life, but you look at it from third person. So you watch your life play on the big screen. Then you go and you look at your significant other and you see how they see the world. You look at your parents, like how do your parents see you? What age do they see you? You look at your grandparents. And so you really start to get a lot of compassion because everybody's trying to do the best that they can, right? But some people they just simply didn't know. Like I had an angel reading and one of my guardian angels that came through was one of my great grandpas. And they're just like, hey, we're so proud of you. Like we wish we could have done what you did, but I just understand like times are different, but we're watching you, we're guiding you, we're cheering you on. And so you just have to understand like, and it's not like you're not holding people accountable, but you also have to understand like everybody for the most part, like that's like maybe a blanket statement, but I feel like everybody for the most part is just doing the best that they know how.
That's it. Some people, and that's why I say you're either born to transform or you learn to transform or you don't transform at all.
Exactly.
That's just the reality.
Yeah.
But everybody's doing the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has good intentions. That doesn't mean that the action is good.
The intention is like, that's such a powerful thing too, because it's like, yeah, like I'm trying to, you look at parents, right? Like they're, abusive. Like I was talking to one of my clients who was getting tattooed and like they were telling me like they were getting abused when they were a kid. And then they realized like how bad, like they were getting abused when they were kids, like their parents. And it was just like this continuation of this cycle. And it's just like, this is just all like you don't know anything different. It's like you get stressed out and it's like, this is what happened to me. And so you also have to have somebody that can like go in and it's like, hey, like this stops with me. Like this is where like everything stops. Like I have tattooed Be the One. It's like you're the one person to rewrite the entire like family lineage. Like you're here to break any of the bounds, any of the spells that have been passed upon you. And so I think it's just having a little bit more compassion, but then that compassion also needs to have accountability backed by it, because it's like, hey, I acknowledge that you have good intentions, but this is not acceptable and I need you to fix it. Otherwise, I'm not gonna allow you to talk to me this way. I'm not gonna be in your surroundings. Like, I have no problem with cutting people off if I can establish like, this is how I need to be treated. If you're not going to respect that, then you don't respect me, because I'm bringing this to light. This is no longer something that's being done in the shadows. Like, I'm actually bringing this to light, and I'm letting you know that this is not tolerable. And if you continue to do that, then I'm out.
Yeah, you said it. Intention doesn't mean you're acting good. Helps you have empathy or sympathy.
For sure.
Oh, this is all you had. Like, this is what you grew up with. This is what you learned. That's unfortunate.
Yep.
And it actually allows you to forgive them more, because you start to see how they are living and why they're living that way.
Uh-huh.
But it also helps you even set that boundary even more.
Yes.
And the cool thing is that boundary actually helps two people grow.
Oh, absolutely.
It can tear the relationship down because somebody's not respecting you, and then you just move on with your life. You cut them out because they don't deserve your energy.
For sure. For sure.
But it also can teach them that there's a new way of living.
And a lot of people are acting and they're not even aware that they're doing this. And until like that even gets brought up, then they're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I thank you for letting me know that this is how I've been. And there's so many instances where I've gotten called out on my shit. I'm like, I was not even aware that I was doing that. And I'm like, I can, I have sympathy, because I wasn't even, my intentions, and I'd always use this too, right? Like, my intentions were never to hurt you, but like, I understand where you're coming from. So I'm going to make sure that I do better.
Yeah, exactly. Intentions, it's very rare somebody's like, I want to hurt somebody so bad. Like, you have to really be going to therapy or something if you are intentionally wanting to hurt somebody.
Yes.
Intentions are good. And when you realize that, when you have the conversation, I've been told some things that I got to do better on before.
Yep.
And quite frankly, I still do. And I respect my wife for that.
Yeah.
I want her to be able to look at me and be assured that she's safe to say, hey,
For sure.
you need to do this better.
Yeah.
I don't want to beat around the bush. Just tell me what I got to do so I can be the best husband.
Yes.
With that, it's crucial to let them know, hey, this was my intention. I never intended to hurt you, because it also helps them see that you're ready to go.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, no, that's super powerful, of just having that, like, that space and that container, and letting people know too, like, hey, I'm open to hearing your feedback. Like, if there's something that I can do to be a better person, I can show up to be a better husband, to show up as a better friend. Like, you also have to let people know, like, you're open to hear that. Like, it's like, you may not want to hear what you hear in that moment. And this was something for me, is like, I would hear something, I would get defensive about it. I would sit with it for, a day or two, and I'm like, oh shit, you're absolutely right. Like, I do need to change that. But it's like allowing that space of like, yeah, you can tell me whatever I need to be told to become better.
Exactly. And to highlight that, what I see in your life is awareness.
Yes.
I'm writing my book, The Transformation Code, right now. It's coming out in March. And the beauty in this is that nothing will transform without awareness.
Yes.
You have to be willing. If somebody says something to you and you actually hold it, kind of like any object, you really look at it, you look at all the angles, how does this feel? You look at everything, what's inside. You look at every aspect, every angle to truly understand it.
Uh-huh.
If you disagree with it, it's actually okay. Like, just because somebody says, hey, you need to do this better, that doesn't mean that it's true.
Right.
It might be somebody's limiting belief that they're portraying on you.
Yes.
You have that conversation. Hey, I really looked at this. And based upon what I found, I saw that this is a possible truth, but I also would disagree with it in this manner. And you have that open dialogue and that open conversation of how you want to grow together, the boundary.
Uh-huh.
And it helps you grow as an individual, them grow as an individual.
Yes.
You to grow together as a couple or a relationship if it's outside of your relationship.
Absolutely. I'd be curious to know, like, how you, because I mean, a lot of people I'm sure are probably like wondering, like, oh yeah, like that would be awesome, but like, how do you even like open up that like dialogue, open up that boundary of like, hey, like I want to just continue to be better for you. Like, what's your process? Like, what is it that you go through to like in your marriage or anything like that?
So 99% of the people that I coach to around relationships, they're portraying their own crap.
Uh-huh.
Or when somebody comes and has a conversation, they put walls up and they start to attack each other. The crucial part about communication, being willing to set boundaries, having an open dialogue, One is vulnerability,
Mhm.
but never saying the word you.
Yeah. I feel,
I feel like this is really how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's also talking the difference between needs and strategy. Most people talk strategy. For example, finances. Most people struggle about finances. My wife cannot balance a checkbook. She's always going over. They start to attack.
Yes.
Their strategy is just don't spend money. That's actually not the strategy that they want. That's not what the husband wants, right? I read this in a book and I completely disagree with it. The need is, I need to trust you that we can set a budget so that we can be a team to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
When you start to talk about your needs in a relationship, that's when you're willing to transform. That's when your spouse is going to be willing to transform. Hey, what I really need is for us to be a team.
Mm-hmm.
I want this simply because I envision this for us.
Right.
When you start talking about the need and the vision for that need, it creates an open conversation that anybody would dream about.
Right.
But how would you not hear that?
For sure.
It's like, hey, babe, I really need this so that we can accomplish this. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
And after you really establish each other's needs, you hear each other, you establish a vision, then you can start to talk strategy. This is why I need for both of us to willing to not go over budget.
Right.
And you can start to develop a strategy. And when you fully understand the situation, the pain that it's causing each other, the couple, whatever the case is, and you set that strategy and a level of accountability to one another, anything can happen.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's powerful.
There's obviously a lot of more we could talk about there, but the simple truth is just don't attack somebody.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about overcomplicating things. Communication. Stop talking strategy before you talk about your need.
Yeah.
Talk about the need first. Ensure that the person's open to that need and is willing to listen. From there, you can start to set the strategy with that individual, which sometimes is a boundary or sometimes it's just a new process of life.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Do you see that in your own life?
I think that's very powerful because I think a lot of times people are going to feel some type of way too. It's like, especially if it's like a you statement, right? Like, I know that's like, so like it's talked about so heavily, right? Like, don't use like a you statement, use an I statement, but it's like actually like embodying that, right? Like, it's not just like, cause it's like, I knew all the things like to say, like, it's like, okay, like I feel some type of way. I'm not using the you statement. So I think like really genuinely telling somebody, this is how I feel. This is why I feel that. Let somebody else hear what what their feelings are. But I really like that. Like, this is what I need. Like, this is what I'm hoping to achieve from this. And this is why I'm, bringing this up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to say the least, we talked about extreme ownership. That book, it's phenomenal. I forget, you said the author.
Yeah, Jocko Willink.
That concept is oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the reality. Most people won't say this, but the truth is you just went through a divorce. Divorce is okay. I don't know your situation. Yeah. The reality is breaking up is okay.
Yeah.
If both parties are taking extreme ownership and something's not working, go your separate way.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other caveat is if you're taking extremely ownership and you can look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I've done my best.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this for myself. I've done this for her or him. I've done this for our relationship. And you've taken extreme ownership and something still isn't working out.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. Something wasn't working.
Yes.
It's okay to move on.
Right. And I think that's something that we can hit on a little bit. We're also in this like time of like this new earth energy. So a lot of people are going to start realizing that they are not living their like truest life. They're not living their truest purpose. And you'll see a lot of people who are going to be doing job changes. You're going to see people that are getting out of relationships that they've been in for a long time just because and I don't know, like what people's beliefs are or anything like that, but we're like the frequency has risen as like the entire universe, the entire planet. Like we're in a higher frequency now. People are able to like, this is going to be the era of healing. Like a lot of people are going to be going through their healing work. A lot of people are going to be changing the script. Like a lot of people are going to be doing major life changes. And if you don't believe me, like just look around, like it's happening right now. But I've also had this like conversation with my fiance too. It's like, it's almost a blessing to like go through a divorce. Like I don't like, if you can figure it out, like definitely figure it out. But it's like, I got married so young, like I was 19 years old, right? Like, and it's like going through so much different life changes, and it's like learning how to like grow together. And there's just a lot of like maturity that doesn't really come with like such a young time in your life, where you go through so many ups and downs. Like sometimes there's just so many triggers, there's so many things that it's like it's ran so deep that sometimes you just have to come to the realization this just isn't it anymore. And it's not, like you said, it's not like a bad thing or anything like that. Like one thing like I like to say is like, a lot of people are like, oh, that's wasted time, right? Like, oh, this is 10 years of wasted time. I don't like to see that, because like, for example, you could go to a really nice exotic vacation and you can appreciate while you're there, but you don't ever have to go back to that same vacation again. Like you can acknowledge it, you can appreciate the time, and then you can just let it go. You know what I mean? And so it's not like saying like, oh yeah, go out and get a divorce. Like that's not what I'm saying at all either. But it's like, if you are both like on a different page and you're, trying to figure things out, and like the energy is just not there, like it is okay just to walk away. And yeah.
And you said it, it's the last, and that's why I say, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Until you can't lie to yourself in the mirror and you can't fully say, I've done everything.
Yeah.
It's not the route.
Right.
You got to do whatever it takes to succeed.
For sure.
And then you can let it go. And that's okay.
One, I think the way a relationship can grow and prosper is each person has to be on the same page of growth. Like if one person's growing and the other person's not growing, it's going to create not only, I wouldn't say resentment, but just a different level of just energy. Like I'm a big like energy person. And it's like, if you're operating from a different frequency, your person's operating from a different frequency, it creates this like polarity. Like there's no like union that's coming together to like connect that.
Absolutely.
And so it's like a lot of times, I'm sure, people in like the entrepreneur realm, it's probably hard when it's like you're not on the same page as things and everything like that. And so I think it's just understanding like you both have to be in the same mindset of growth, whatever that looks like. But like you have to look at your shit to be able to figure out like, how can I come to this relationship better? How can I serve my person better? And it has to be a two-way street. And I think oftentimes, a lot of times in relationships, people are about that, but the other person's not about that. And it's like they're like trying to meet each other at different times. And you have to be able to like continue to grow together in order to not like feel like you have to meet each other at different points and times.
Exactly. I talk about the victim-victor mindset.
Yes.
A lot of people actually don't understand the difference. The victim sees the problem, stays in the problem. The victor sees the problem, talks about the problem, feels their emotions, very vulnerable with them, whether it's sadness, anger, whatever they're going through. But they create the strategy out.
Yeah.
Wasted time. Come on. Your corporate job, sales. How much does your experience benefit you today?
So much.
Is that wasted time?
No.
Absolutely not.
No. Everything happens for a reason. Like I also like, I'm a huge believer in that. Like everything is preparing you for the next chapter. Like you going and, somebody going through a bad breakup, like a bad breakup's a blessing, because then you get to like look at like, okay, where can I improve? Like, having a failed business is awesome, because it's like, okay, I got my ass kicked. How do I ensure that I don't get my ass kicked again? Like none of it's wasted. It's only wasted if you choose for it to be wasted. If you choose to look at it as like, this was like that's, I mean, like you said, the victim and the victor mindset, like it's just what it is.
A relationship of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, sometimes even 50 years.
Yeah.
Doesn't all of that just help you have a better relationship in the future?
Yes.
That's why when you're a victim, you just keep repeating the same things over and over again, just with different people or different businesses or different careers. It all looks the same, just with a different title on it.
Well, and I think that's also your karmic debt too. Like, it's like, if you don't learn from whatever you're going through and you continue to keep making the same, I don't even want to use the word mistakes, but you keep making the same decisions over and over and over again, and you're not learning. Like, and that's why the accountability thing is such a big thing, because it's like, if you can own all of your shit, everything that happens, you're only going to progress. You're only going to progress. Because if you understand, like, I screwed up here, I'm going to make sure that I don't do that again. You have to get better. The only option is for you to get better. Like, you can't just sit in this place of stagnant if you already know you got your ass whoops. You have to get better to ensure that that doesn't happen again. And that's in all areas of your life.
Absolutely. It's the awareness piece, right? Looking
Yes.
at it. Awareness is either the keys to your handcuffs or you're just choosing to throw the key away. Again, to reiterate, you've in so much of this podcast, and I'm just seeing a glimpse of your life right now. You see something, you create a strategy to overcome it. Whether it's your inner child, vulnerability, your business, corporate world, you've just consistently done that. And that's the victor mentality, is you see where you're at. And it's not a judgment of I suck. It's, hey, this is the reality, and this time I'm going to change that reality. But on the other side is you can see it and be like, well, I'm comfortable. I'm going to throw in the towel. And that's the victim mentality.
Yes.
And you've really encompassed that victor mentality throughout your entire life. So I just want to say hats off to you, man.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. And it's definitely not easy. Like, it's definitely not like the easiest path, but it's like the most rewarding. It's the most fulfilling path. Like, growth is definitely not always the easiest. Like, comfortability, like that's why comfortability is so like common amongst most people, is it's just like it's comfortable, but growth, like, that requires you to look at yourself. Like, growth can't happen without friction. So you have to have that friction to even warrant you to want to grow. And that's why triggers are so good, because it's like you want to be grateful for that, because that's allowing you to get better, because it's like you may have had something in your mind that you weren't even aware that existed until something triggered it. And without like any type, like I said, it's like if you don't have any adversity, you don't have any juxtaposition, like how do you grow? Like how do you even know what to grow from?
Yeah, if you want an easy life, make it hard. If you want a hard life, make it easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's like, I was big into personal development, even from the age of like 17, you know what I mean? Like reading stuff, but it's like, until you're like going through the shit and you know what you need to work through, it's like, okay, you're just reading a bunch of stuff. But it's like, once you understand, like, okay, I'm struggling with this area here, now I know what book to pick up, because
Intentional work.
Yes, intentional work. Personal development isn't for like when you need it, it's for when, or that's not the time to read personal development isn't for when you need it. Like, that's already, like, that time is already passed. Like, you need to like be like constantly striving to try to become better, because that's going to give you tools for when the shit hits the fan, you don't let everything crumble. Like, I got rocked last year. I got rocked, you know what I mean? But it's like, I had to have enough like understanding of like, okay, I know things are going to get better. And I had to have tools in the tool belt to make sure, like, okay, I can get through the next day. I can get through the next day. I can get through the week. I can get through, like, you know, getting surf papers. I can get through totaling my car. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be, you have to, like, you know, prepare for the battle before you go into the battle.
Absolutely. Or you lose.
You'll lose. You'll get hit hard, and you're like, I've never been hit like this. Like, what do? I don't even know where the next step is to like try to pick up the pieces.
And that's where you recognize, like, okay, I'm not doing this great, so I'm going to go pick up this book so I can be better. Or I see this as a weak area to where maybe I'll lose in this in the future. So I'm going to go pick up the book. I'm going to find the mentor. I'm going to find whoever to be able to create that result.
Yeah. And I think that comes from like how you've used the word awareness a few times. And it's like most people are aware of like where they struggle, where they're not at the highest point. And it's like, just having that awareness is going to allow you to become better. Just allow you to pick up the book. And it's like, I may not necessarily need this right now, but I'm also aware. I have enough self-awareness to understand that this is an area that I do struggle with.
This is like a sarcastic question, kind of, but it's real.
Yeah.
Do you know how to keep a man poor?
How?
Put how to get rich in a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally. Most people don't read. Most people, going back to the victim mentality, they see that everybody struggled with relationships. They've seen that everybody struggled with their spirituality, their identity, whatever. And they're aware of it. But they keep lying to themselves as, this is just how I am. This is just how family is. They stick in that problem. Anything you're struggling with is in a book.
One thing that I say is like, everything's figure outable. Like putting, like I've made it like a thing for myself. Like, I will never put somebody on a pedestal, because nobody has any type of like capabilities that I don't possess. And if I don't possess it, I can learn it. So everything is figure outable. I mean, shit, I learned how to tattoo through YouTube. Like, it's just, I mean, that's like basically surgery, but I learned it through YouTube. But everything's figure outable. Like, if one person's done it, it's like, you know, the marathon run, was it Roger Bannister or whatever? Like, after he did the 4 minute
mile.
Yeah, then it's like everybody can do that now, because like they're like, okay, somebody's done it, I can do it too. Like, for me, I'm trying to create a path, and I'm trying to pave a way of doing stuff that nobody's ever done before.
Absolutely. That's the way to live, man. And everything is figure outable. These top people that people would pay thousands of dollars to have conversations with is right there in a book. Go pick it up.
Yeah.
And with all, like, I love most of the people that have come on this podcast. I've loved all the podcasts. It's obviously given me a platform to meet other people that I haven't even interviewed yet.
For sure.
And I'm sure you've tattooed some good sized people in the follower world.
Yeah.
You meet them and you're like, man, if you can do this, I definitely can.
100%, bro. I've hired people and I'm like you,
like, wait, I just paid you for this.
Yeah, what? Like, yeah, this is so elementary.
I already knew this.
Yeah.
I definitely can get what you.
Yes.
So it's not to discredit what they've done.
No. But I think a lot of people undervalue like their own knowledge. Like, it's like we go back to the same thing of like, oh, people want things to be hard. And it's like, I was the same way. It's like, I knew all this information, but I like almost needed somebody to validate me to be like, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, well, I've literally already known this information. Like, this is nothing new.
So wait, you're telling me I can do this? I already know this. I'm an expert at that. Yeah, exactly. And it's worth the money to be validated, for sure, frankly.
Yeah.
Because it gives you the confidence of somebody has created this result. I already know this. And now it's just a matter of time. And that's I talk about if versus when. When you get to the when mentality, you'll never quit.
Right.
I already know all of this information, so it's just a matter of time when I get this outcome, when I get this result. So I just got to keep doing the reps.
Yeah.
Because in reality, it's hard. A lot of entrepreneurs don't talk about this.
Yeah.
Do you know how many days look the same day after day, writing the book, creating the program, doing the tattooing for you? It looks the same. And then sometimes in life, nothing changes.
Yep.
But every day looks the same.
Yep.
That can be tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And doing it lonely.
Yeah.
There's a transitionary period of entrepreneurship where you don't necessarily align with the people that you've been friends with.
Yep.
But you're not good enough for these people that you want to be friends with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so your day looks the same, your life looks the same, and you work sometimes 1 year, 5 years, 10 years before you actually get the outcome.
Yep.
Until you're actually able to be friends with the people you want to be friends with. But when you know, man, when you know your stuff, it's just a matter of when. Keep going, for God's sakes. Keep going.
Well, I think it's that knowingness too, because it's like I look at like when my life came crashing down last year, like I didn't feel like I had any type of purpose anymore. Like I was like, what's my purpose? Like I had no purpose. And then it's like once I rediscovered like, okay, my purpose is to become, you know, this is just one part, like my purpose, but it's like the Michael Jordan of tattooing. Like I'm, you know, that I'm trying to create a legacy. Like that's my purpose. So it's like anything that I do, it's either getting me one step closer to that or it's getting me farther away from that. And so it's like, I talked to one of my friends and it's like talking about like the integral part of like what you say to yourself. It's like, okay, if I'm telling myself that I'm the best tattoo artist, but I'm not living my life in accordance of what a best tattoo artist would do, then I'm out of integrity. I'm blatantly lying to myself. And so it's like, that's where saying like, keeping your word to yourself of like, okay, if I say that like I'm going to be, you know, X, Y, and Z entrepreneur, I have to have all of my actions back that. And it's like you said, it's like, okay, a lot of this stuff looks the same. Arnold talks about this too. When he's bodybuilding, he's like, every rep that I was doing is getting me one step closer to my dream. And so you're no longer even focused on, okay, this is a mundane thing to do, because it's like your vision and your belief in yourself is so much bigger that it gets rid of all of the mundaneness, because you know that you're striving for greatness. You know, it's like when you do the compound effect, right? Like you invest and it's like, okay, this all looks so the same, but eventually one day it's going to be this like big mountain of whatever. You have to have some type of vision to keep you in that like mundane, like that daily grind, because your vision is so big and you're living your vision now. That's how you manifest, right? Like you manifest by living in accordance of, like if I say I'm going to be something, I have to live like that now. It's not like Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about it in his book. It's like, you'll see it when you believe it. It's like, you'll believe it when you see it.
I love it, man. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
Really, you're an amazing guy.
Thank you, bro.
It's very clear that the reason you've accomplished this success is because of who you are, which is manifestation.
Yeah.
You've operated in a way of being somebody before you got a result.
Yes.
And by being, you've accomplished that success. So well done.
Thank you, bro.
Just a couple quick hit questions for you.
Yeah.
To begin is, what is your definition of an authentic life, man?
I think it's just honestly just being true to yourself. Like, it's like the authenticity piece is just allowing your thoughts to come in, like being who you are. Like, you're no longer trying to like be like, I think what they say, the ego is like your ego is like you trying to be what you think other people think you should be. Like, being authentic to yourself is just like, this could be a moment to moment thing. Like, what do I just feel like, how I should act, how I should behave? What do I like? I'm no longer worried about like, what is somebody going to think of me? What type of perceived judgments are people going to have to me? Like, I'm just following my heart. I think that's like your most like authentic, your authentic life is just following your heart.
That's really all it is. The reality is we all know when we're lying to ourselves.
Absolutely.
You can lie to anybody else in the world, and some I know, some may.
Yep.
You can never look at yourself in the mirror and lie to yourself.
And that hits, bro. Like, when you can sit in the mirror and you can look at yourself and you know, like, okay, like you know if you're lying to yourself. If you say something and you're like, I know this isn't true, then it's not. You either have to figure out how to do work to be able to like get to that point, or you just have to be real with yourself.
Authentically living, and to go off of that, is when you cannot lie to anybody.
Yeah. When
you can really say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, and just live your truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, just as a side tangent, do you have any? I used to be a kid that would run around. I started smoking weed, drinking at the age of 13, started petty theft, petty crime, selling drugs here and there.
Yep.
I started that at a young age.
Yep. Same.
Sounds like, yeah, you as well.
Same.
You know how many lies I've told to even this woman over here to be cool?
Yep.
Yep. You know how easy it would be to just keep living in that lie?
Yep.
When you can really look at somebody and be like, hey, babe, I've lied to you for like 7 years about this just to be the cool kid.
Yep.
Because we met each other at 16.
Okay.
We were immature kids.
Yeah.
Around.
Yeah.
I got married at 19. She was 18. Blessing.
Yeah.
But she met me when I was unconfident.
Yep.
Being able to look at your sister, hey, I've lied about this for so long. Like, when you can start to really live your truth and not lie to not only yourself in the mirror, but the ones around you, man, life gets so much
powerful, bro. Super powerful.
Authenticity is the key to just about anything you want in life.
Absolutely.
That's just a matter of being real. If there was one last thing you could leave with the audience, say, what would that be?
I think it's just really understanding, like, you can really do anything that you put your mind to, as long as you don't ever quit, you don't ever give up. The world is yours. Manifestations as real as, you know, this water. Like you create your own reality. Like, tomorrow doesn't exist. It only exists because you already believe how tomorrow's going to look. When you can rewrite the script and you can visualize how you want your ideal self, how you want yourself to be, how you want your future to look, and you act in accordance of, and you go back to the authenticity piece of like, okay, this is who I believe I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to act. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I put myself in the ring for things all the time that I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I know that this is what I would be doing at my higher self. And so it's like, when you want to create your own reality, you have to first visualize it. You have to second believe it. And you have, like, the biggest thing, especially with like finances, because a lot of people want to finance, like, they want to manifest money, but they're like, I'm a millionaire, but they don't believe it. Like, if you don't believe it and you're not in a high frequency, it'll never happen, because the universe is never going to, like, it only knows vibration frequency. And so if you can't believe what you say, and that's where like a lot of people need to do like some real self-work, is like, if I say one thing, do you actually believe that at your core? If you don't believe that at your core, that's where the healing journey begins, is because you need to get to the point of, you can say, you're a good husband, you're a good friend, you're a good entrepreneur, you're a good X, Y, and Z. Until you believe those things, it's not true. And so it's like that authentic piece of like manifesting your dream life is, you have to believe exactly what it is that you're saying, and you have to visualize it before it's going to happen.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk to the audience for a second, because I know there's some people out there that be like, oh, that's woo-woo.
Yeah, this there.
the one question I'd have for anybody that's thinking that way, how much better would your life be today if you just started acting as if it was true?
Yeah.
Just acting as if it was true. Like, you don't have to believe it, but how much better would your life be just by acting on that topic?
Yep.
If you believed you could create tomorrow, how much better would your tomorrow be? If you believed that you could create 6 figures, 7 figures, whatever you're wanting to create, and you believed that, how much more money would you make? You don't have to believe something for it to be true.
Yeah.
It's the fact is if you started acting as if something was true, your life would be better.
And you're going to have so much more pep in you. Like, you're going to have so much zest in your day too, because it's like, oh, today matters. Today actually matters, compared to just being stuck in this hamster wheel of going through the same motions, taking the same route, saying the same thing. Like, that's where it's like, you talk about NPCs, right? Like, non-player characters. Most people are not even cognizant of what they're doing during the day. They're just going through the motions. But when you know you're creating something, everything changes. You rewrite your entire identity. You change what you eat. You change your daily habits. Everything changes because you're acting in accordance of.
Love it, man. That in mind, the last question is, how can myself and my audience be supporting you?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media. Instagram is inked_era. I also have Spencer Rogich tattoos. TikTok, if TikTok's still around, is there.
And those will be dropped down below as well. Definitely give him a follow. Go check out his art.
Thank you, bro.
Dream art right here.
Thank you, bro.
I'll get a tattoo by you someday.
Yes.
That's a promise. It's just on a recorded line, so I can't keep that.
Be happy to do it, bro.
Definitely. That in mind. Thanks for coming on again, man.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks so much for listening to the Journey to Authenticity podcast today. If you liked what both myself and Spencer had to offer, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. This helps to ensure that I get the highest quality, most interesting guests to help you transform your own life. Also, why I have you here. If you're in a position where you really want to start to feel your emotions, overcome your limiting beliefs, start to manifest and create the dream life that you truly desire to live, go ahead and go to braidenbelnap.com or the link below and go to my coaching. Let's schedule a time where I can really help you create that vision for your life, get clear, set a plan and path on how to get there, and overcome your biggest obstacles to make it happen. That in mind. Have a good one, everybody.